Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. Empress Dowager Cixi's life could truly be described as glorious and illustrious. During her nearly half-century rule over China, she not only wielded immense power, but also enjoyed a life of luxury and extravagance, with meticulous attention to her food, clothing, and lifestyle. Yet, even as a formidable woman of her era, Cixi still harbored some regrets in her heart. And what annoyed her the most, surprisingly, was celebrating her birthdays. Whenever she reached a milestone age, such as 40, 50, or 60, the court would hold extravagant and lively celebrations. But strangely enough, every time Cixi had a major birthday, the country would run into serious trouble. When she turned 40, Japan invaded Taiwan, and the Qing court had to pay a whopping 4 million taels of silver in reparations. At her 50th birthday, the Sino-French War broke out. The war was intense, and the entire nation was under strain. Her 60th birthday was the worst of all, right in the middle of the First Sino-Japanese War. In the end, the humiliating Treaty of Shimonoseki was signed, resulting in a major loss of sovereignty and national dignity. But what truly troubled Empress Dowager Cixi was not the war itself, but the dilemma surrounding her 60th birthday celebration. Why? Because in the eyes of the common people, turning 60 was a major milestone, especially in an era with poor healthcare and a low life expectancy. To live to 60 was already considered long life. Even in the poorest of households, people would bite the bullet to buy some meat or slaughter a chicken to celebrate. After all, reaching 70 was almost unthinkable for most. Cixi, of course, wanted to celebrate her milestone birthday in a grand and glorious fashion. But the country was at war with Japan. The national treasury was already stretched to the limit, even military expenses were barely being covered. Where could they possibly find the money to throw her a lavish birthday celebration? Yet none of the ministers in court dared to suggest frugality. Everyone knew that if anyone dared to say, "Your Majesty, let's keep it simple this year," they would likely lose not just their job, but possibly their life. In fact, as early as the year before her birthday, the 19th year of the Guangxu reign, Cixi had already begun making preparations for the celebration. She personally ordered Prince Li to head a special committee for organizing the birthday festivities. Just from the lineup, it was clear this was no ordinary event. By all logic, with the country barely able to put food on the table, Empress Dowager Cixi should have shown some compassion for the people's hardships and tried to cut costs. But those who truly understood her knew, Cixi was not someone who would settle for less. She was quite similar to Emperor Qianlong in temperament. Everything had to be done with grandeur and prestige. Even if there was no money, she would find a way to get it. The celebration had to be grand and dignified. So, Cixi personally set the standards and ordered the Ministry of Rites to plan the celebration exactly according to the scale of Emperor Qianlong's 60th birthday. In other words, regardless of the hardship, not a single element of grandeur could be omitted. It had to be a proper and impressive event. Some might wonder, why did Empress Dowager Cixi insist on modeling her 60th birthday celebration after Emperor Qianlong's? The answer is quite simple, because Qianlong had set a bad example. When Emperor Qianlong turned 60, the celebration was extremely lavish. Most notably, he issued a special edict requiring all the nobles and high officials across the empire to voluntarily donate funds. Though framed as donations, in reality, it was a forced contribution. Depending on one's rank, officials were required to offer gifts or silver to the emperor, not as a true gesture of goodwill, but as a mandatory political task. In the official Qing records, this was described with particularly elegant language. Upon reviewing the 60th birthday celebration during Qianlong's reign, all princes, nobles, and officials from the capital and beyond displayed utmost sincerity. With imperial delegation, they submitted detailed lists of contributions and expenses to seek approval. In plain language, this meant, "We checked what Qianlong did." And all the officials eagerly gave money and gifts. Everything was clearly listed, and the emperor was very pleased. Cixi's thinking was equally clear. Don't say I'm being unreasonable, there's a precedent. Qianlong did it, so why can't I follow suit? To ensure the process was thorough and well documented, she even instructed Prince Li and official Shrouded to draft a detailed donation list, clearly stating how much each level of official must contribute, not a tael less. Within a few days, the numbers were finalized. All officials across the country were to collectively pay 1,206,900 taels of silver. Of this, officials in the capital were responsible for 263,900 taels. How was it collected? By directly deducting it from their salaries and allowances. They had no option to say no. This was a political mandate. Anyone who refused was essentially risking their job, and maybe even their life. Provincial officials were no exception. Though the amount they had to contribute varied slightly depending on their region's economic conditions. Wealthier provinces had to contribute more, while poorer, less developed areas were allowed to give less. Take the economically average provinces of Hunan and Hubei, for example, each had to contribute 43,600 taels of silver. In contrast, more remote and underdeveloped regions like Yunnan and Guizhou were each required to provide 32,600 taels. Of course, not just anyone was qualified to contribute. Only the highest-ranking civil and military officials in each locality were included, positions such as viceroys, generals, commanders-in-chief, and other top-level officials. Lower-ranked officials, such as surveillance commissioners and below, didn't qualify for this birthday tribute operation, even if they wanted to contribute out of their own pockets. Once the Ministry of Rights issued its notice, the responses from provincial governors varied widely. Some of the more affluent officials saw this as a golden opportunity to show loyalty to the Empress Dowager, flatter her, and perhaps gain a promotion or some wealth in return. But those who were more frugal or genuinely upright could only sigh in frustration. Take Wang Wenshao, the viceroy of Yunnan and Guizhou at the time. Known for his relative integrity, he neither sought personal gain nor engaged in corruption. His annual income was only about 20,000 taels of silver. Yet, between Yunnan and Guizhou, he alone had to contribute 3,290 taels, an amount that ordinary people couldn't earn in a lifetime. But Wang Wenshao was no ordinary man. He was a seasoned political veteran, known for his shrewdness and tact. Given the slow communication in the remote southwest, he even sent a telegram to Sheng Xuanhui, a close confidant of Li Hongzhang, asking for insider information on how much other provincial governors were contributing, just to ensure he didn't pay too much and suffer a loss, or too little and risk being criticized. Sheng Xuanhui, being on good terms with Wang, disclosed the donation schemes of other provincial-level officials for the Empress Dowager's birthday celebration. But Sheng didn't stop there. He also revealed a heavyweight piece of inside information. Li Hongzhang, the viceroy of Zhili, had not only contributed his standard share of the tribute silver, but had also offered an additional 30,000 taels as a special fund for the Empress Dowager's birthday celebration, specifically designated as scenic decoration silver. These scenic decorations referred to elaborate displays set up along the route from the Summer Palace to the Xihua Gate, including dragon towers, opera stages, scripture sheds, ceremonial arches, and more, altogether 60 scenic segments. Each was based on an ornate and specially designed blueprint. The cost of constructing these scenes was distributed among the provinces, with each province responsible for funding one scene, 30,000 taels apiece. Upon hearing this, Wang Wenshao felt deeply uneasy. He had already believed his contribution was significant, only to find that Li Hongzhang had gone above and beyond. If others followed suit, Wang would risk falling behind. What made him even more anxious was that Sheng Xuanhui reminded him, in addition to the tribute silver. Viceroys and governors were also expected to offer exquisite tribute gifts. Without these, their offerings would be considered incomplete in terms of ceremony. This revelation stunned Wang Wenshao. He immediately convened another meeting with the senior officials of Yunnan and Guizhou. This time specifically to discuss the tribute gifts. In the end, they reached a consensus, on top of the silver already pledged. They would raise an additional 10,000 taels to purchase tribute items. Even if it meant a financial loss, they had to maintain appearances. Yet even with that decision made, Wang Wenshao remained uneasy. He repeatedly urged Sheng Xuanhui to closely monitor developments among provincial officials. And to report back immediately should anything shift in the winds, so he wouldn't fall out of step. In truth, Wang Wenshao wasn't the only one troubled. In the capital, civil and military officials were also visibly distressed. Just like their provincial counterparts. They too had to submit tribute gifts after handing over their offering silver. But their situation was even more difficult. Many capital officials already had meager salaries to begin with, barely getting by on allowances. To raise the required offering silver this time, they had already gone into debt, scraping together whatever they could. Now, not to mention silver, they couldn't even find a few copper coins to rub together. As for the tribute gifts, there wasn't even a shadow of them in sight. Privately, the officials began gathering to discuss. Couldn't this tribute business be skipped? They had already expressed their loyalty, did they really need to be pushed to the brink? However, despite all the talk, the capital officials were far from united. At this critical moment, Prince Li, Shrouded, stepped forward and spoke. In every dynasty, during the Empress Dowager's grand birthday celebrations, the imperial kinsmen were always expected to offer tributes. That statement stunned many. Just as some were starting to show a little backbone, this declaration made them hesitate again. If even a prince personally declared it necessary, then skipping it no longer seemed an option. Sure enough, as the grand birthday celebration drew near, the truly powerful figures at court had already begun quietly preparing their tributes. Though no one said anything out loud, their actions did not go unnoticed. Once it was clear others were making moves in the shadows, who would dare sit idly by? Everyone feared that Empress Dowager Cixi might hold a grudge if she found out who didn't contribute. So all the officials began scrambling, afraid that falling behind would give others grounds to accuse them. By this point, everyone knew perfectly well. This so-called birthday tribute was no longer a matter of genuine goodwill. It had turned into a blatant display of political allegiance and a contest of wealth. The more one gave, the more lavish the gift. The more it signified loyalty and understanding of the greater picture. But if one was slow or contributed less, there was a real risk of being punished later. This entire farce was a clear reflection of just how rotten the corruption of the late Qing dynasty had become. When even the highest ruling class was this corrupt, what could be expected from the lower levels of government, prefectures, counties, and townships? In a system like this, if the Qing dynasty didn't collapse, that would be the real surprise. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.